Good evening. This is Mark Cassidy, and this is my final reflection for Module 8, Unit 7, Activity 1. As it pertains to data-driven collection, I think it's paramount, key, probably the cornerstone of how you teach your class, especially when it comes to differentiation. Using data-driven instruction allows you to teach your students based off their strengths and their weaknesses. In terms of being able to do bell ringers, exit tickets, and being able to even choose different virtual platforms that may be better or worse, whether it's Kahoots, quizzes, pivots. It's very paramount in guiding the students through the lesson plan successfully. In terms of when we had the discussion, a lot of things I learned from my peers. One thing is different platforms, I can't remember them offhand, that can be used to drive data instruction, to where I've started to try to look for some that are outside the box of what we normally use at my school to inform data. I've even tried, in terms of listening to some of the peers, going above and beyond in terms of looking at the individual data, not just as a class, but in terms of specific dynamics. I think methods used to address a student misunderstanding, believe it or not, in my experience, have been getting to know the kids outside of school, knowing what stresses they have that may hinder their focus or hinder them being able to study at home. And so, the remediation may not be necessarily in the form of hard instruction, but sometimes I found that it may be strategies to help them be successful based on what they have going on outside of class. So data-driven instruction isn't just numbers and educational data and lectures. Data instruction can just be the child as an individual in terms of social, economical aspects. In terms of prior knowledge, that's the part where remediation is key. Going from Unit 1 to Unit 2, but still making sure to have random bell ringers and exit tickets, or maybe a extra credit on a pop quiz that relates to Unit 1, still gives kids that chance to remediate and go over that prior knowledge. So hopefully they can retain it more once you get to the fourth unit, and then finally the GMAS at the end of the year. In terms of a naive misunderstanding, I think, a lot of times we tend to do data-driven instruction based on the actual content and content knowledge versus the way that the assessments are given and the platform and the form of the assessment, especially summative assessments or even formative assessments, maybe in terms of a pop quiz, but especially with the summative assessments, giving a test where it's pick the best one, pick the best three, pick the one that's not drag and drops. The way that you ask the question is just as important as what the question is pertaining to. And so doing remediation and data assessment, not just on the content knowledge, but on the style of question that the students are having problems answering, is just as important. Because you can have a student get the content, but not understand the formatting and get the wrong answer. If I were to give myself a rubric scale in terms of 1 to 4, I would say a 3. I think my content knowledge is strong. I think I need to do a better job at facilitating, more co-learning stations, just allow the students to teach themselves versus me teaching them and then coming up with interesting ways that they can interpret the information. I think that would be the next step for positive data instruction. And then in terms of outlining a strategy to use to improve alignment, for me, like I said, in terms of co-learning and student-led, we're just time stations and timed lectures. That way with the timed lectures, I have more time to not be as long-winded and then being able to transition to another activity that can further help them. or time stations where now they have the responsibility to finishing this task, whether it be the lecture notes, a pivot, or using our college book to finish it on their own. And that way, not only is it time that they have their responsibility to finish it, but now they also have the opportunity to collaborate with their peers. Thank you very much and have a blessed day.